The day my brother handed me a spreadsheet instead of a hug, I knew something in our family had broken beyond repair. I still remember standing in the kitchen of the house I had helped pay for, the house where I had lived for 3 years, the house where I had painted the walls and fixed the leaking faucet, and stayed up late, nursing my sister-in-law through a difficult pregnancy, holding a printed document with my name at the top and a total at the Wortley seeing bottom. $47,212. That was what my brother said I owed him. That was what 3 years of being family apparently cost. I didn't cry. I just read the number twice, set the paper down on the counter, and said, "I'll need a few days." He said, "You have until the end of the month." That was a Tuesday. It was also, though I didn't know it yet, the last day I would ever ask anyone in my family for anything. My name is Claire. I am 29 years old, and this is the story of how I went from holding a debt I never agreed to owning the building my brother's company rented its office space from. He doesn't know that part yet. Let me back up. I moved in with my brother, Derek, and his wife Sandra 3 years ago after I lost my apartment. I had been working as a junior graphic designer at a mid-size marketing agency, making decent money, nothing spectacular. My landlord sold the building, the new owners converted it to condos, and I had 60 days to find somewhere new in a city where rent had become a kind of slow violence. Derek offered the spare room. I said yes. I want to be clear about what I contributed. I paid $700 a month, we agreed on that. I bought my own groceries. I babysat their daughter Mia every Friday night without being asked. I helped Sandra with her postpartum appointments when Derek said he was too busy at work. I repainted the living room, the hallway, and the master bedroom when Derek decided he wanted a refresh. I did the taxes for Derek's small business 2 years running because his accountant was expensive and I had taken accounting electives in college. I did not do these things to run up a credit. I did them because they were family, and that is what family does. The spreadsheet disagreed. According to Derek's document, I owed rent beyond the $700 we had agreed on. He had retroactively decided the market rate for the room was $1,200, and the difference had been accumulating. He had charged me for utilities at a rate he calculated himself. He had charged me for Mia's babysitting at $15 an hour. He had even itemized meals, Sunday dinners that Sandra had cooked, that I had eaten, at a per-plate cost he found on some catering website. I looked at every line. I did not recognize a single agreement. Sandra was standing in the doorway when I read it. She didn't say anything. She looked at the floor. I understood then that this had not been her idea, but I also understood that she had not stopped it. I went back to my room. I closed the door. I sat on the edge of the bed that I had brought from my old apartment, in the room that I had lived in for 3 years, and I did something I had not done since I was a teenager. I made a list, not of grievances, of assets, because here is the thing about me that Derek did not know, that Sandra did not know, that almost no one knew. 18 months earlier, I had sold a small mobile app I had built in my spare time. Nothing glamorous, it was a scheduling tool for freelance creatives, subscription-based, about 4,000 users at its peak. A small software company had approached me through a mutual contact. We negotiated quietly. I signed the paperwork at a coffee shop on a Wednesday afternoon, and then went back to work like nothing had happened. The number in my account after taxes was not a hidden fortune in the movie sense. It was not a mansion and a yacht, but it was $231,000. And I had told no one, because at the time I had no reason to. I had kept working my regular job because I liked having structure. I had kept living with Derek because moving mid-lease, even an informal one, felt disruptive. I had kept being the quiet, helpful sister who fixed things and asked for nothing because that was who I had always been. The spreadsheet changed my relationship with that identity. I did not respond to Derek for 4 days. On the second day, he knocked on my door and said, "I hope you're looking at your options." I said, "I'm looking at a lot of things." On the third day, Sandra knocked. She came in and sat on the edge of the chair by the window. She looked tired in the way that has nothing to do with sleep. "He's not trying to hurt you," she said. "He's just we have expenses. The mortgage went up with the rate adjustment and—" "Sandra," I said quietly, Did you know about the spreadsheet before he printed it? She was quiet for a moment. He showed it to me last week. Did you tell him not to? She didn't answer. I nodded. Okay. She left. I went back to my list. On the fourth day, I called an attorney. Not a family attorney, a real estate and contracts attorney. A woman named Miss Okafor who had been recommended by a friend. I read her the spreadsheet over the phone. She asked a few questions. She said, "None of this is enforceable without a written agreement, which you don't have." She said, "The original verbal agreement for $700 a month is what stands." She said, "He can ask you to leave with proper notice. He cannot sue you for the rest." I thanked her. I paid her consultation fee. I felt something loosen in my chest. I called Derek that evening. "I've reviewed the document," I said. "I don't owe you $47,000. I owe you the agreed $700 for this month. I'll give you written notice that I'll be out in 30 days. There was a pause. "I'll take you to court, Claire," I said. "You're welcome to try." He hung up. I want to tell you what happened in those 30 days, because it matters. I did not rage quit in a dramatic scene. I did not post about it online. I did not call our mother, who lived across the country and had her own complicated relationship with Derek, and turn it into a family war. I moved quietly, and I moved deliberately. I found an apartment within a week. A one-bedroom in a neighborhood I had always liked, close to a park, with good light in the mornings. I paid first, last, and deposit without blinking. The leasing agent looked at my bank statement and said, "You're approved." I signed the lease and walked out into the afternoon sun and stood on the sidewalk for a moment, just breathing. Then I found a financial advisor. Her name was Miss Chen, and she had been recommended by Miss Okafor. I sat across from her and told her the number in my account, and she did not react the way I expected. She didn't say congratulations. She opened a legal pad and said, "Tell me your goals." I thought about it. I said, "Security. And I want to invest in something real." She said, "Real estate?" I said, "Yes." Over the following weeks, while I was still living in Derek's house, I met with Miss Chen 3 times. I did research in the evenings after Derek and Sandra had gone to bed. I made calls from my car on my lunch break. I was not impulsive, and I was not emotional. I was surgical. There is a small commercial building, 6 blocks from Derek's house. 4 units, ground floor retail, 2 office suites upstairs. I had walked past it 100 times. I had noticed the owner considering offers sign in the window 2 months earlier before the spreadsheet and filed it away in the back of my mind as a passing curiosity. It was no longer a passing curiosity. The building was owned by an older couple who had managed it themselves for 20 years and were ready to step back. The price was fair. The occupancy was stable. One of the upstairs office suites had been leased for 2 years to a small marketing and consulting firm. The consulting firm's name was Pinnacle Group Solutions. My brother had started Pinnacle Group Solutions 4 years ago. I want to be careful here about how I describe what happened next, because I do not want you to think I went looking for this. I didn't. I found the building. I reviewed the tenants, and I saw his name on a lease document and sat very still for a long moment. Then I called Miss Chen, and I said, "I want to move forward." She said, "Are you sure? One of the tenants is your brother's company." I said, "I know. It's a good lease. 2 years left, reliable payments, no violations. It's a good investment." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "All right, let's write the offer." I moved out of Derek's house on a Saturday morning. I hired 2 movers. I was packed and gone in 4 hours. Derek watched from the doorway for a while. He didn't help. He didn't say anything cruel. Either he just watched with an expression I couldn't fully read. Somewhere between vindicated and uneasy, Sandra hugged me at the door. It was a real hug, not a performance. She whispered, "I'm sorry." I believe she meant it. I squeezed her hand, and I left. I cried in the car for about 10 minutes, not from sadness, exactly more from the strange weight of endings. 3 years in that house. 3 years of Friday nights with Mia, of Sunday dinners, of being the sister who showed up. I grieved that. I let myself grieve it for exactly the length of the drive across town. Then I pulled up to my new building, and my movers were already there. and the afternoon light was hitting the windows at just the right angle, and I carried the first box inside myself. The closing on the commercial building happened 6 weeks later. I sat at a long table in Miss Chen's office. The sellers were warm, a little emotional. They'd owned it for 2 decades, and it meant something to them. I told them I intended to be a responsible owner. They believed me. The papers were signed, the keys were handed over. I was now the landlord of a 4-unit commercial building. I was 29 years old. I did not call Derek that day. I did not call anyone in my family. I had a quiet dinner at my favorite Thai place, alone, with a book, and I went home and slept better than I had in months. My property manager, a no-nonsense woman named Miss Rivera, handled the day-to-day. She sent renewal notices, she managed maintenance requests, she collected rents. I reviewed the reports every month. The first month, Pinnacle Group Solutions paid their rent on time, $4,200, directly into my account. The second month, same. The third month, Miss Rivera flagged a maintenance request from the upstairs suite. The HVAC unit was making noise. I approved the repair. It cost me $380. I did not reach out to Derek personally. I had no reason to. He was a tenant. Miss Rivera handled it. For a long time, I think he had no idea. Then, about 5 months after I bought the building, my mother called. My mother and I have a relationship that is loving and complicated in equal measure. She lives in Phoenix, she calls on Sundays. She is not a bad person. She is also someone who has spent her whole life smoothing things over between people who should probably just have a hard conversation. She called that evening and said, without much preamble, Derek told me what happened. I said, "Which part?" She said, "He said you left without resolving things. That there were financial disagreements." I said, "That's one way to describe it." She said, "Claire, he's your brother." And I felt something I had been waiting to feel, not anger, but clarity, a kind of calm that is only possible when you've already done the work, when you're already standing on the other side of something. I said, "Mom, he handed me a spreadsheet charging me for Sunday dinners. He threatened to take me to court for money I didn't owe him. I left with proper notice. I don't know what resolution looks like to him, but I'm not chasing it." She was quiet. I said, gently, "I love you. I love Derek, in the way you love someone who has disappointed you. But I am not going to apologize for leaving." She said, "I just don't want you to be alone." I said, "I'm not alone. I'm just not where I used to be." We talked for another 20 minutes about other things. Her garden, my new apartment, a show we'd both been watching. By the end, she sounded easier, lighter. Before she hung up, she said, "I'm proud of you, you know. Even when I don't fully understand you." I held the phone after she hung up, and I thought about that for a long time. Derek found out I owned the building on a Thursday afternoon. Miss Rivera told me the next day. Apparently, he had come down to the management office to ask about renewing his lease early. He wanted to lock in the current rate, which was reasonable, and Miss Rivera had pulled up the ownership records to confirm the terms, and he had seen my name on the documentation. Miss Rivera said he stood very still for a moment. Then he asked if there was some mistake. She said there was no mistake. He left without discussing the renewal. He called me that evening. I was in my kitchen making dinner, and I looked at his name on my screen for a moment before I answered. "Claire." His voice was flat, controlled. "You own the building." "Yes." "Since when?" "About 5 months ago." A pause. "You bought it while you were still living with us?" "I was in the process, yes." Another pause, longer this time. "You never said anything. You never asked about my finances," I said. "You just assumed." I heard him exhale. I waited. I was not angry. I want you to understand that I was genuinely not angry anymore. That part had passed through me, and out the other side, somewhere between the closing and the first rent payment, and the evening I sat alone at my favorite restaurant with a book, and felt, for the first time in a long time, entirely like myself. "What are you going to do?" he asked. "With the lease." "Honor it," I said. "You have 2 years left, and you've been a good tenant. I have no intention of disrupting your business." Silence. "Derek," I said, "I don't want to hurt you. I never did. I wanted to be your sister. I wanted to be family in the way that actually means something, and you handed me a spreadsheet. His voice, when it came, was quieter. I was stressed about money. I know, I said. I understand that. But you didn't talk to me. You tallied me. He didn't have an answer for that. I didn't expect one. Your lease is safe, I said. Miss Rivera handles everything. If you want to renew early, talk to her. I paused. Take care of yourself, Derek. I hung up. I stood at the kitchen counter for a moment. Outside my window, the city was doing what it always does, moving, indifferent, continuous. Someone honked. A dog barked twice. The light from the building across the street made small gold rectangles on my floor. I thought about the girl who had stood in Derek's kitchen, holding a spreadsheet. How quiet she had been. How careful. How practiced at making herself small in rooms where she should have taken up space. I thought about Miss Okafor and Miss Chen and Miss Rivera and all the women who had sat across tables from me and helped me understand what I was capable of. I thought about my mother's voice saying, "I'm proud of you." I thought about Mia, who was 4 years old and had nothing to do with any of this and whom I missed on Friday nights. I thought about what it means to forgive someone who hasn't asked for it. Whether it's weakness, or whether it's the most powerful thing you can do with pain, refuse to let it become your whole story. I am still deciding, but I am deciding it in my own apartment, in my own time, with my own name on the deed of a building 6 blocks from where someone once told me what I cost. They had no idea what I was worth. And honestly, for a while, neither did I. But I know now, and that is the part they can never take back. If you are sitting somewhere tonight holding a number, someone handed you a dollar amount, a list of your failures, a receipt for the love they claim they gave you, I want you to hear this. You do not owe anyone for the simple fact of your existence. Not a parent, not a sibling, not anyone who opened a door and then later tried to charge you for the draft. You are allowed to leave. You are allowed to be quiet about your strength until the moment it matters. You are allowed to build something so solid and so yours that when the people who underestimated you finally see it, you feel nothing but the clean, uncomplicated satisfaction of someone who always knew. You don't need their permission. You never did.